Good evening to everybody. This is Saturday, and this is our in-concert live stream on Saturday the 23rd. We're hoping that you can join us for an hour of really exciting music. I think it's going to be a very exciting program this evening. This live stream is one of our twice a week live stream series, which we are presenting from our home in KwaZulu-Natal. And these programs are going out free of charge on various platforms. As I've said many times, the easiest accessible platform off Facebook in South Africa. But if you're looking for the best quality of sound and the most reliable picture and sound, you are going to get them at Vimeo, which you will find my channel at my website. That is also embedded into my website, so you can in fact watch it live and the next day at my website, musicrevival.co.za. But it just sometimes, with the traffic of the internet and depending on your internet connection, it might be not up to speed of some of the other feeds, for instance on YouTube. So there's always a bit of a juggle which way you want to go. But if you want the best quality of sound and image, which I think is really great going out, we have fantastic equipment and a fantastic live stream going out. Vimeo is actually the best place to view this. This evening's program, I decided, after we've had some rather relaxed, easygoing sessions, especially on last Wednesday with Pages from Grandmother's album, that Saturday, the Saturday program, we needed some excitement and a bit of classical music with Vuma and a bit of edge and brilliance to it. I thought, well, I've been taking a bit of a relaxed road for a while. And of course, I have chosen the hottest day so far of the year. This is typical end of January weather in this part of the world. It's been a blistering 38, 39 degrees. There has not been a cloud in the sky the whole day. It is still blazing sun outside. I've got the aircon and a fan on me because the one thing I cannot cope with when I'm trying to perform is the heat. And when my head gets hot, then it all starts to fall apart. So if you hear a bit of a whirring in the background, it is the aircon and the fan which is going to accompany me through the program. And this evening, I'm going to be playing a selection of music for you by Scarletty, by Mozart, Schubert, Chopin, and a Hungarian Rhapsody by Franz Liszt. So I'm going to dive straight into the music. I'm going to start off with two Scarletty Sonatas, which for many years used to be a sort of almost an old-fashioned way of starting any classical program, with a pair of Scarletty Sonatas. Scarletty often composed these sonatas in pairs, although the two that I'm playing are composed at completely different times and not linked. He composed about 500 of these short sonatas, principally for Queen Barbara of Spain, or one of his keyboard students who ended up being the Queen Barbara of Spain. And the first sonata, as I always say, many of these pieces reflect the atmosphere of the royal courts, and the first sonata certainly has those elements. There's a feeling of drums, great ceremonial atmosphere, trumpets, calling out, the royal fanfares, great sense of ceremony and grandeur and brilliance, not a brilliance, but a sort of resplendence to the music. But whatever is very unusual about it, and I don't know any other piece of music that does this, is that the music comes to a halt, and when it does continue, it completely starts in another random key. It comes to a halt on a... You expect it to go, but instead it goes... Just very unusual. Really, Scarletty, a little twinkle in his eye, playing a joke, leading the audience up to a great sense of expectation, giving them a grand pause, expecting it to carry on, and then he pulls the rug out from everyone's feet and carries on with something completely different. The second sonata is a very brilliant, jaunty little piece of music. Many of Scarletty's sonatas are well known for a number of keyboard effects that he includes. One of them is to repeat notes, like a Spanish guitar. Another is he asks the pianist to cross hands. In other words, in fact, if Barry can go to my hand keyboard view, you'll see this clearly. Etc., etc. Things like that, that crossing of hands always helps when your jacket's not too tight or when you're quite comfortable with what you're wearing. And the other thing which Scarletty includes in his music with Spain is the influence of the flamenco guitar playing. And in this particular piece, there's quite a strong element of it. You hear these very dark chords, strumming of chords. And in fact, what he does here is something quite unusual. Again, I don't think it's very rare in the piano repertoire. He actually asks the pianist or the keyboard player to play 11, sometimes 12 notes at once. You think, well, how do you do that if you've only got 10 fingers? Well, Scarletty puts a note under each finger and then 2 notes under the thumb. So there's 6 notes in the left hand, in the right hand, and 6 notes in the left hand. 6 on the left and 6 on the right. So you're actually sometimes playing 11 or 12 notes, very briefly, but they are there. That strumming of the flamenco guitar. And this particular sonata includes all of those elements: the Spanish strumming, the crossing of hands, the repeated notes, the trills in the middle of a chord. Very colorful sounds, very colorful in terms of the surrounds and in terms of the atmosphere of Spain. But first of all, the sonata in D, both of them in D major, but the sonata in DK 491, the K number referring to the catalogue of the 500 Scarletty sonatas as created by Mr. Kirkpatrick. So K for Kirkpatrick, he gave each one a number, and that helps us identify which one is which. First of all, K491 and then K116, I think it is. 2 sonatas by Scarletty to start this evening's in concert on the 23rd of January. riveting, ravishing sounds there of Domenico Scarlatti and his flamenco Spanish-inspired sounds, the guitars, the repeated notes, the crossed hands. As I said, one's always got to check when you're crossing hands. I thought, actually, I haven't checked that, and I haven't checked, in fact, how tight my jacket is on me. So, of course, when you are crossing hands and your jacket's holding you back, it's not the ideal, it's not the easiest. But anyway, that was two sonatas in D major, a royal fanfare to start with, and then more flamenco-inspired and brilliant sounds from Scarlatti in the second sonata. I'm going to move on to two compositions by, or two movements from a composition by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Last week I played the first movement from the sonata in F major, K332. And I thought it went rather well. It seemed to come across very well in the sound and in terms of the quality of it. And I thought, well, actually, it's a great piece of music, and it'd be lovely to play the second and third movements for you as well, which I am going to do now. The second movement then being following up to the first movement last week, which was very outgoing, full of joy and brilliance and exuberance. The second movement is more, has a beautiful, relaxed, expressive, very slow, expressive nature about it, but really brings together a unique sound, a unique line, I think, in terms of Mozart's writing, in that he repeats the opening phrase of the melody but changes it from the major to the minor. So the phrase, and then he immediately changes it to, which is a very haunting, very poignant way to immediately change something so blissful and positive into something quite mysterious and melancholic, you might say. After that, I'm going to play then the third movement from the sonata, which is very brilliant and very outgoing, lots of cascading runs up and down the piano, and really reminding us once again that Mozart in his day was also famed not only as a composer, but as a virtuoso, a performing pianist. And that's really how he made much of his living, was through playing concerts and through starting to even, he's one of the first musicians to start to promote his own concerts and sell tickets to the general public who funded his concerts through the sale of public tickets. And of course with Mozart it was always a bit of a challenge, and he was always taking a risk. And once he had sold all the tickets to the concerts, then he had to start and finish composing all the music that he was going to play. And of course that came down to the final hour, last minute, before the orchestra and the people involved had the music only hours and sometimes minutes before the concert started. Talking about cutting it fine. Anyone who's worked with me in my concerts knows all about that. So the sonata itself is full of brilliance and exuberance. I say it's such a positive piece from beginning to end, the second and third movements as well. And the second movement, when I say that the music is lyrical, I always talk about something which is lyrical. And that means that it's possible for not possible, but it's inspired by a very natural singing of the human voice. For instance, that's a melody that someone could sing. That's a lyrical style, as opposed to a brilliant keyboard virtuoso style. That's not something that someone can sing. That is not lyrical. That is keyboard figuration in a very brilliant and virtuoso way. So these two movements really contrast between the personal, the sense of lyricism, the fact that you can almost hear Mozart singing it himself, the melodies inspired by a very personal, sensitive and genuine reflection of a personality in terms of how they're speaking and how they're singing, whereas the third movement, which is more virtuoso, more instrumental, is more about the brilliance. There's more something about a flamboyant show-off nature to this music rather than the internal, very spontaneous, personal line which comes through in the second movement. The second and third movements, the Adagio and Allegro from the Sonata Case 332 by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The beautiful lyricism in the second movement, and then a great brilliance and excitement in the third. Probably saw me snigger and laugh to myself. There was one little spot there that I couldn't remember what note the left hand started on. There was a little bit of a gap, and I kept on guessing, and it happens twice. And then I had to repeat the whole section. So there were 4 times. And every time I was getting to that one note that really is. But fortunately, I caught up. Tricky little piece of music when these pieces go round and round in circles, and suddenly you forget one bar here or one bar there. It's like a piece of the puzzle. It's like having that 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, and there's one piece missing, which just spoils the whole thing. Anyway, so enough of Mozart. We're going to move from Mozart now onto the music of Schubert, Franz Schubert. I'm going to play another of his 4 impromptus, opus 90, the first set of impromptus. And I find this piece particularly haunting. It's very different, and I've included it because it's a very different atmosphere to the Scarletty and the Mozart, which you just heard. Schubert writes an impromptu, and in terms of his impromptu naming, I think, he gives a sense that music is very spontaneous and that music is going to happen purely on its own accord. Yes, Lucy, I can see you. Lucy's coming in early. Lucy's you wanted to sit in your basket? Come in your cushion. Come on, in your cushion. Lucy's feeling very happy with herself because she was featured in the newspaper today. There was a fantastic interview thanks to Frank Shamali at the Independent Newspapers in Durban. Wrote a really wonderful story, did an interview with me the other day, and mentioned little Lucy, who's the star of the show. Even had a picture of her. Hey, Lucy. Yes, you've had your dinner. Let's give you a little cuddle. Give you a little scratch. You even had a swim this afternoon in the boiling hot. You had a little dip in the pool. I think it was by accident, but you enjoyed it. Yeah. Come on, off you go, into your basket. There we go. Lucy the pudding. Right. So, I was saying, Schubert impromptu, this idea that the music is happening spontaneously and is just coming from a very magical and mysterious place. I think that's what Schubert is dealing with. That's what the idea of an impromptu, this sense of that music is beyond our logic, beyond consciousness or our conscious thought, that there's something mysterious and it comes from a place deep within or far away. And what really fascinates me about this piece, this is the that's how it starts. Now, there's no melody there. It's just this cascading. You can't sing that. And it's a background. And it's an absolutely fascinating piece of music for me because I don't think any other composer has ever done that or dared to do that. To literally write a background for the first page. Like a watercolor. It's almost like creating a wash of color, a wash of sound. And only later does the real melody, you might say, come through in the left hand. So Schubert presents something which he's almost uncertain of, and he presents it in an uncertain way. It's just a feeling, it's just a mystery. There's just something which is mysterious and a mood that is a preparation for something else. And instead of trying to force the melody or to force something into it, he just presents it as it is. I find it an extraordinary, beautiful piece of music and unique idea. The middle section, more of a melody, maybe brooding but very turbulent, before this haunting refrain that repeats again and again and again and again. Sometimes the mood changes and he changes the color and the atmosphere of it ever so slightly, but it's just that background element which is repeated throughout the piece, first and third parts, and it's such an extraordinary moment. So this is the impromptu in A flat, opus 90, number 4, by Franz Schubert. It's a rather special piece of music. I think there's something extraordinary about that music. It's there and it's not. It almost exists and it almost doesn't. It's really an incredible color, an incredible mood, and an incredible experience that Schubert sets up. Yes, Lucy's back again. Hello, Luce. Oh, and here comes Wendy Pop. Gosh, everyone's coming. They have been fed. Oh, no, you can't bark now, Lucy. Okay, let's pick Lucy up. Say hello to everyone. Then maybe we'll be okay. Here's little Lucy. Were you excited to be featured in the newspaper, Luce? Little Lucy, the celebrity Dachshund, the long-haired Lucy. Would you like another swim later on? Because it's very hot outside, yeah. Oh. It's very warm. Yes, no, I know it's very warm. There, you've had your moment. Okay, off you go. Very quietly, go and sit with Wendy. There we, yeah, no, well, that's not what I had in mind, but gosh, just as well the camera's not looking at that one. I'm going to move on to the music of Frederick Shopper. And last week I played the second scherzo, and tonight I'm going to play the first scherzo for you. So these scherzos really represent Chopin at his most brilliant and outgoing, very robust sense, a very grand concert element, but also something quite serious and quite dark about these pieces. And this is a particularly exciting, and it's a really brilliant and exciting piece of music. In fact, someone who comes to my concerts regularly says that this piece of music is in fact terrifying. Yeah, that's probably a good word. Terror is probably good. There is a sense of that, and the inspiration or the moment, which is actually very real, which we know about, which is linked to this piece of music, is Chopin's own experience of his first trip, or one of his first trips away from Poland, when he found himself in Vienna. So here's a young man who leaves his home in Warsaw, his family who loved him, his community who celebrated him, his teachers who hailed him as a genius. He was very loved, he was very comfortable and very nurtured within his home environment. And suddenly he was out in the big wide world, in a foreign country and in a strange place, and having to find his way and his future. And he found himself in Vienna, and on Christmas Eve he was in St. Stephen's Cathedral alone. And he talked about this piece, and he talked about his experiences there, how he found himself cold, lonely, probably hungry, looking for something, looking for guidance, looking for solace maybe, and finding himself in this church which was incredibly windswept, cold. He said he was aware of the graves beneath him, death all around, the snowing, the storm outside, and something of that terror and that turbulence and that complete anxiety is expressed in this music, from the opening chords, which are a complete shock, to the brilliant outburst, the turbulence and the outburst which comes back and forward and then builds into waves. But in the middle of it, in the middle of this piece, he then quotes a Polish Christmas carol. To his terror and to the anxiety of the music, because suddenly it presents this moment of recollection and this moment of remembrance, as though he's comforting himself by remembering another time, remembering happier times with his family, being at Christmas, being so content and so loved, before this terror and the brilliance and the overwhelming anxiety of the music returns. So it's a very just not to say disjointed piece. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of anxiety, but it's very incredibly exciting as well, and it builds, as I say, in these waves before there's this final exclamation. That he writes triple fortissimo, in other words, to be played very loud. So this is a very exciting piece. It's also very treacherous. Hope it's going to go okay. This is the Scherzo number 1 in B minor, opus 20, by Frederick Shopper. All right, well, brilliant, tense concert music there. I told you there'd be a bit of excitement and some just brilliance in this program. An incredibly exciting piece at the Scherzo number 1, the first of 4 scherzos by Frederick Shopper. Scherzo in its original sense meaning joke, but playing them is no joke at all, apparently, as I can attest. Certainly no joke. Very challenging music, but incredibly rewarding and full of so many incredibly rich ideas. Now, I'm going to end off this evening's program with one of the celebrated Hungarian Rhapsodies by Franz Liszt. Liszt, just read a fascinating biography about him, and was Hungarian by birth, even though he spoke German at home, and he spoke French for most of his life, obviously when he was living in Paris, but traveled extensively, and never spoke Hungarian. And when he became incredibly famous, and when he became the world celebrity, the superstar of piano playing that he was, we've got a whole menagerie of puppets here. Look at this, all 4 puppets have arrived. Here's Frida, we are Freeds. There's little Lucy. We also want to come in on the action. We've heard about Lucy being in the newspaper. And here's Wendy Pop with her little waggy tail, wagged the whole way through the scherzo. And Granny Lulu, the brown one. Hello, Granny. Granny Lulu's 19 years old now and is really doing well. I think she's looking for another dinner. She got fed a short while ago. And they're giving Frida little licks. Lots of loving going on. So when Liszt was famous, he was embraced by the Hungarian authorities as great son of Hungary, and he was invited to come back to Hungary and be celebrated as the great Hungarian international superstar that he was. And he stood up and he said, "I am Hungarian," but he said it in French because he didn't speak Hungarian. But anyway, he was very proud of his Hungarian nature, and I think it also fitted him well, because Liszt, as I say from reading this biography, anything that had to do with adulation and being that superstar that he liked to be, he really took to it. He really, ladled it on. And so he wrote these Hungarian Rhapsodies to celebrate Hungarian culture, he thought, but unfortunately the melodies that he thought were Hungarian were in fact the melodies of the roaming gypsy people who were never welcome around Europe, really, wherever they were. But nevertheless, it's very exciting music. This is not the most serious of Liszt's music. It's not the most serious of anyone's music. But there's a great sense of exuberance and celebration in this music, which I think is something we all need. There's a sense of dignity. There's a sense of pride, of a march, of desolation, of despair. But then it turns into a dance, and there's a great sense of brilliance and triumph. And that sense of excitement, celebration, I think, is really the music that comes through, or the word or the idea that comes through in this music. And out of the 18 or so Hungarian Rhapsodies that he wrote, this number 12, which I'm going to play for you, is said to be one of the most cleverly composed, because instead of just the music existing in sections, there's an interchangeable idea that the opening theme, which you hear, recurs, and especially at the end, comes in the middle part in a very quiet, gentle little dance, but then in the final moments it comes back as a great, grand anthem. Sort of very Tchaikovsky-like, a little tune that you hear once gets returned at the very end of the piece in a very grand, triumphant transformation. And throughout all this music, Liszt includes so much element of the dance, element of brilliance and brilliant pianistic figuration, some really clever and very ear-tickling little runs and things that he has. And one of the things about Liszt's music, which is always so enjoyable to play and rewarding to play, is that it just fits so well under the hands. I was working today on one of the Chopin Etudes, which is a project that I'm hopefully coming through with. And I've played this piece for about 20 years or so on and off. And only today did I really realize that the music The way the music fitted under the hands was actually nothing to do with the way the music actually went. It's a difficult thing to explain. But with Liszt's music in this piece, everything has to do with the hands. It's literally, it plays itself in some ways, in many ways. So this is the Hungarian Rhapsody number 12 in D flat, and Lucy is going to enjoy it. Now, off you go. Hungarian Rhapsody number 12. Exciting, brilliant piece of music, full of flash and excitement, and including two notes have gone out of tune. Who knows? I must have played something in the shop on that really put that out. Very irritating that those notes are not in tune. Maybe it's not a little authentic, like the traditional cymbal, I think it's called. Traditional instrument that would have played those sort of melodies and those sort of trills. Anyway, that brings an end to this evening's program. We've run a little bit over time, so thank you if you stayed with us. This has been Christopher Daigan in our in-concert performance on the 23rd of January. Thanks to Barry at the controls. Thanks to all the girls, the dogs, for behaving this evening. And I hope you are enjoying your evening. If you're in this part of the world, it's going to be steamy and beautiful, warm evening, I'm sure. And I think a dip in the pool again is coming up for me. And please feel free to share this with anyone that you would like to, that you feel might enjoy the performance or any of our streams. If you are able to support us, please, you'll find a QR code now, a new one. We've got a new QR code which is flashing up for the Yoko channel. It's a direct credit card link which we have. And we're very grateful for any support. We've had a number of very lovely donations and supports coming through again in the last couple of weeks. busy writing emails and writing thank you letters to everyone who's been sending through. Some of the donors who have actually donated right since the beginning have not included their names in what I can see on the bank account, so it's very difficult to contact or to find out who actually the donors are. So if you are feeling a little bit aggrieved that I haven't contacted you, please check that you actually know that what your details are, that I can contact you either by email or by WhatsApp. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you have a splendid evening. Look after yourselves, stay well, keep safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday and next week, Saturday, for the next in our live stream series.